Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who has a crush on their roommate and was rejected. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we are not professionals. We are not trained in any of this in any way. I think Spencer once taught us how to use our recording equipment, but that is the extent of our training.
He did once tell us how to do that.
Please take Sam and I's advice as you see fit. We're only here to offer our humble and uneducated musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love.
All right. So it's Monday, so we are going to do a check-in topic. And this check-in topic is inspired by a letter that we got from fucking reality TV, whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing from off the island. And I'm just going to read it because it's only 2 paragraphs long. So I was trying to check all the way out and catch up on some pop culture, months late to the scene as per usual. So I decided to binge Love Island last night. It was all going down in a relatively harmless way until they played the gross numbers game. The whole premise was guessing/revealing the contestant's body count, which is obviously a weird term and concept and also gross segment for the show. But what actually threw me was a side comment made by a contestant about how, quote, body count doesn't matter as long as you're clean. And that was like the most compassionate reaction to this segment offered by any contestant. So, of course, then I Google the screening process for Love Island, and of course, they're all STD tested before the show, which was just confusing because I get the safety measure being taken, but also I'm positive with 2 strains of HPV, the genital wart-causing kind and the cancer-causing kind. The cancer-causing kind is easily prevented by the Gardasil vaccine, but I was raised by an absent addict mother who never bothered to take me for the 2nd and 3rd shot. Kind of goes to show you have no idea what kind of pain an STD joke or even well-intentioned comment brings up for a person. I get that it's reality TV, but there was something so hurtful about watching these people splash around an artificial landscape that has had the less beautiful, less clean people pre-filtered out for their comfort. Like, God forbid someone would have to bring up, hey, I'm actually HIV positive, but it's managed and undetectable because of the medication I take. Would you like to discuss what that would mean for you as a potential sex partner? Ugh. Why am I letting a stupid reality TV show hurt my feelings? I felt gross and dirty and lesser than all day. I know, right? So I thought we could talk about reality TV / triggers that we have while watching TV and just kind of muse on the portrayal of STDs in reality television shows.
Yeah. We've talked about that before on the show, but just to reiterate, all of the representation we receive and even so much of the education, I know it's getting better. I know it is. But honestly, depending on the state you're in, the community you're in, the class you're in, I don't know what people are getting. But for me and my generation, all of the representation about STDs and STIs they were fear-based, they were shame-based, they were abstinence-only based education, And the letter writer is absolutely right. First of all, the idea of a body count being something that you judge someone by is not in alignment with my morals.
Sure.
Yeah, and as the comment, body count doesn't matter as long as you're clean. It's like a double-edged sword. It's like, yes, and also, what if you're not, quote, clean? Like that word. The association with STIs with cleanness and purity and smart choices is just such an unfair alignment because we know that, you can be incredibly responsible and get an STD. You can be sexually not experienced, you could be assaulted. There's a million ways that these diseases, like any other disease, come into our lives, right? And the shame and the stigma around STDs particularly is so incredibly disappointing. So I too would be, honestly, one of my triggers is reality TV. I can't handle it because I feel like I feel like it grabs onto characteristics of society, like the stigmatization of sexuality and STDs, right? And it makes a caricature out of it. Like they exaggerate, they make this caricature of human life and then put it on display for us to watch in like a tiny ring. You know, I'm imagining like mice fighting or something. Anyway, so yeah, that's my general response to the STD joke and the body count. I've never seen Love Island. I'm guessing the premise is like hot people go to an island.
You got it. That's all you need to know. Yep. And there's like 47 episodes per season because it plays like 4 days a week.
Yeah. And they just hang out, or they fuck, or they...
Yeah, they hang out and then they make
flirt.
them do little like games and put them in weird scenarios and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like...
I miss the days, I will say, I miss the days of Real World when Real World was brand new.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it really was, you know, they had somebody who was HIV positive on there. And that like really helped break the stigma back in, I don't know, 1991 or whatever year that aired.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think the thing that I have to come to grips with, because I am a consumer of reality television. Yeah. I love reality dating shows.
I don't mean any judgment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Truthfully, when I watch reality show, it's on your couch next to your husband, and I love it. I love the escapism and experience I have on your couch.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I'm currently watching the 6th season of Too Hot to Handle, which is just a terrible show, but here we are and I'm watching it. I think one of the things that like is interesting to me about reality television is that like a lot of it, especially like some of these reality dating shows, are ostensibly supposed to be kind of like espousing these like enlightened views of sex and sexuality, right? Where it's like, yeah, these folks are just here to hook up and like casual sex is a thing. And they're talking about the kinks that they have or how rough or not rough they like the sex that they're having, right? Like they're talking about sex really explicitly in ways that like aren't, that we may think of as being super progressive, but actually
that seem coded as progressive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But in actuality, they're like reinforcing some like really like conservative views around sex and sexuality. You know, the STD comment is a great example. Also, the idea of body count, right? Like these are people that ostensibly have had lots of sex and that's why they're on the show, but then they also get judged for how much sex they're having, right? These are also all people who are in, you know, able bodies that are conventionally attractive. They're all in heterosexual situations. And if they are bisexual, it's like sexy, hot. Oh my God, this person could go both ways. You know, like we're really tapping into some of our like baser understandings of human sexuality. And like people are rewarded for performing masculinity or femininity, depending on the body that they're in. Like there's just so much about it that is like, again, coded as being like really, really open, and in fact is actually like reinforcing a lot of different very negative and conservative views of what sexuality and gender should be like. And I am saying this again as somebody who watches so much of this
Honestly,
stuff.
Sam,
like, I am not judging.
So eloquently on this is making me realize that the day that we end Just Break Up, you know, we should do like a spin-off show where we just watch reality TV show and then you give us a dissertation on its failings, but we also get to like react and respond to it. I mean, honestly, I think it's genius. The people are calling for it already. So, and you can just hear my like not reality TV show brain react to it. Like, I think I would just get so stressed out.
For sure.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And like, this is, you know, I watch a lot of reality television in the same way that the letter writer does, which is like escapism. And it's important to recognize like what messages we're continuing to get. And then also to recognize that like, yeah, some of us, sometimes we're going to be offended by the conservative, really like rigid messages that we're getting about human sexuality. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right. And like, of course it is. I mean, like, you know, I know that this like STD moment was like a trigger for our letter writer, but it's also like, you know, these things that we might use to escape might also make us feel really bad about our bodies, might make us feel really bad about our identities, right? And like, and I think that that is understandable. And I also think that we can't like get mad at ourselves for being triggered by like a message that we're getting that we're somehow like not good enough, even if it's coming from the most like stupid thing. Too Hot to Handle, one like the host of the show is like an Alexa that is like has purple lights on it. Like that is what, like they talk to like a Google Home and she yells at them for touching each other too much.
I am like literally this is the next podcast we do is that I don't watch the show. You just describe it to me.
Just describe it to you. Absolutely.
That sounds wild. Do you feel like you get triggered in similar ways, or have you just learned to like separate the escapism from the content?
I think that I struggle to see myself so much in the ways that these people and their bodies are presented that I don't necessarily like think of them as in any way connected to me. Like I'm just like, oh yes, absolutely. These are just people who are paid to look hot and be hot on the show. But I also know that like for lots of folks, this is a way that we can beat ourselves up about like the fact that our bodies don't look that way, or that we're not performing in that way. And also like reality TV itself, especially these like dating shows where they bring on folks who are not unionized and are not paid well and are exploited in lots of ways, is like also kind of like not great too. You know, I really do think that like reality TV show contestants should be unionized. They should be paid and they should have protections. But I am still going to continue to watch it. Yeah. So that's a moral quandary that I'll sit in after we stop recording and I go back to my TV to watch Too Hot to Handle.
I think, well, and maybe a takeaway point we can say is that reality television, it's escapism, it's fun, and it's also it's a caricature of the society that we're in. So it's going to have extremist beliefs. It's going to have the conservative underlining. You know, the thing that bothers me the most is because we love drama. It showcases like the worst interpersonal behaviors. I get triggered by people yelling. I get triggered by people being possessive and abusive to their partners, which we see so much because we love to watch people unravel. And I think it stresses me out when I think about that. This is like often some of our only outside representations of what relationships look like, or what bodies look like, or identities to sexual or connections to our sexuality or whatever. But I can rest in, and we can all rest in the fact that we remember this is entertainment. This is meant to be, I don't know, cartoonish in its representation of the human experience, and that it's only showing this like super pumped up sliver of the human experience. I don't know.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe it's just like the child of divorce in me that I just hate listening to people yell. Like it just is not, it's not escapism for me. It's
that's
like,
real.
Stressful.
Well, and it's like,
anyway,
especially in like the reality shows like the Housewives or whatever, like the Bravo ones, like the folks know what they're doing to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so like you can kind of like get in on the game with them, where you're, instead of being like, oh my God, look at these people fighting, it's like, oh, look at how successfully the person is like winning people over to their side. And like that can be fun. But I can totally understand that like people just like yelling at each other can be very stressful.
I get it though. I mean, every time I go to your house and Peter tells me about the next chaotic show that he's into, I really do love escaping into it. But anyway, well, thanks to our letter writer for the quick check-in topic about reality TV shows. Let's dive into today's letter. It's from Too Close for Comfort, whose pronouns are they, them, who's writing to us from a spacious 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Longtime listener here, it took a while for me to write this letter because there's so much going on that it's hard for me to narrow down to one question. How on earth do I move forward from a mess like this? Everything went wrong in the best possible way, but I'm still so sad and embarrassed. I can't be the only one. My roommate, they, them, 24, and I, they, them, 29, have lived together for almost 2 years and have been coworkers for a year longer than that. I needed a roommate to save on rent, and they happened to be looking for an apartment. We had a little interview first to make sure we were compatible. I found a really cute place. I was so worried that moving in with a coworker would blow up in my face because I need a lot of alone time, and it might be awkward if we didn't get along. But instead, it blew up in a more interesting way. They are one of my favorite people to spend time with, and after a year, I developed a big fat crush. We cook for each other, watch shows together, go on walks after work, host parties, make fancy coffee for each other on the weekends. Even my cat loves them. Damn that.
Yeah.
Damn that animal bond.
For sure.
I tried to wait for the feelings to pass because I figured they wouldn't work. They're younger than I usually go for and more outgoing, and I didn't want to risk making them uncomfortable by reading into their kindness. They flirt platonically with most of their friends and have an active dating life. Having a crush made me feel like a creepy, parasitic creature with big feelings that nobody wanted. I finally confided in a mutual friend who helped me decide that the discomfort of bottling up my feelings was worse than just asking. So I asked my roommate if they ever thought about what it might be like for us to date. They had thought about it. Turns out they'd gone to the same friend months ago with their own feelings for me. But they
I love
don't
that
want
friend
to date.
was like, you should talk to this person about this.
I know. I know.
I think this will go
Good
fine.
on that friend for like playing it cool, but playing it straight.
100%.
You know,
yeah,
it was
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so the roommate doesn't want to date because our lives are too interwoven. They don't want to risk losing what we have. Plus, they want to explore polyamory, which is not what I typically go for. I completely understand and accept these reasons, but it still hurt a lot, and it would be scary to start a new relationship with someone I already live with, work with, and share a friend group with. And I have said in the past that polyamory takes a daunting amount of coordination. The thing is, I really would have liked to try. It's like we've already gone this far and there has been every opportunity for this to go wrong, but it hasn't yet. And you've already joked about buying a condo. Why can't I take you on a date? They said their worst fear is for me to move out, but I can't be their partner. I know that they're just following what's best for them, but in my heart, it feels unfair. We both took as much space as possible while living together and have had several check-in conversations about how we are doing as time went on. It was a difficult week for me, but I felt surprisingly supported by friends. I wrote them a letter for closure. I admittedly got my hopes up and left myself too open-ended at first, and now I've decided to close the door and I'm just trying to get over it to make room for other people. A couple of months have passed. I'm having a very refreshing slut phase and trying to focus on nurturing friendships outside of our shared circle. In some ways, it's actually brought me closer to others. It's just that now I have a messy, melted goo of an ego to clean out of the carpet. And part of me wants to give up and say, it's already ruined. I wasn't jealous of the people they are interested in until I got rejected. And now all of a sudden it stings when they leave for a date instead of hanging out with me. It hurts to take space because I want to be in their life, but it hurts to be in their life because they've chosen not to fit me into the way I wanted. That doesn't seem healthy, does it? I'm so scared that the answer is for me just to move. I do really like the life we've set up here, and on an intellectual level, I'm over it. I'm just waiting for the physical feeling of rejection to leave my body. How do I make sure I'm not using our friendship as a proxy relationship? What if they fall deeply in love with the polycule and I'm all alone? What happens if I re-sign the lease and meet someone special in a year? Could I say, hey, I used to have this thing for my roommate, but it's cool, without sounding like a walking red flag? How much hurt for how long is a reasonable to feel in a situation like this? Is my embarrassment trying to tell me anything useful?
All right, too
I love
close.
this letter.
I know. All
It's
right,
very
friend.
charming.
Thank you so much for writing to us. I'm so sorry that you shooted your shot. You shot your shot.
You shooted your shot.
Absolutely. And you wound up as a puddle of goo in the carpet. That is so hard. And I think it's also especially hard because it sounds like your roommate also has feelings for you, but just for reasons that are a little unclear to me, doesn't seem to want to take this relationship to a more intimate level. And I can only imagine how difficult it is to be in close proximity to them all the time and have your ego constantly bruised by watching them continue to be with other people instead of you, even though that's what you really want. And, that this idea of you're saying, intellectually, I understand that they don't want to be with me and that I need to move on. And I have done that. But then guess what? The body's still there, friend. And it is still telling you this hurts. This is not a space for me to feel like I can be supported, or something needs to change about the situation, because even though your brain is like, yeah, cool, I got it, like our brains often do, our bodies still come in and say, nope, guess what? It still hurts. It's still here. So Sierra and I are going to offer you some compassion and some kindness in this difficult moment for you, as well as some advice. But before we are going to take a quick break.
All right, my darlings, welcome back. And to our letter writer, I totally agree with what Sam said. I think it's particularly challenging because they were like, oh yeah, me too, but not enough or not in the right way. And you're looking at this like literal body of evidence, like this lived experience, this life that you two have built together that's working really well. And you're saying, why not A plus B equals C? Because For A sure. plus B right now is equaling C. And they're like, no, it won't.
You've like figured out like the hardest part, like living together and like coordinating your lives. So,
mixing friends. Oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you've got it figured out.
I want to point that out, like jokes aside, that I think that is maybe you're asking yourself, like, I'm intellectually over this, but I'm still feeling embarrassed. I'm still feeling all these feelings. I think that might be a reason why this isn't just a normal rejection. It's the idea that you are seeing the receipts of how this could work, and they're saying like it's still not worth it to me, and that would be particularly painful to me. Like, I'm actually really proud of you for shooted your shot, because although it would terrify me and it'd be like feeling like you're risking a lot, I think you're right. Bottling it up wasn't doing you any good. And now now you're not living in that liminal unknown. But yeah, I think this is hard because it's not just like somebody you dated that you have to move on from and work with still, or it's not somebody who you were rejected by that you have to see Monday through Friday. This is a roommate. This is a friend. This is somebody who you're arguably like, this reads so queer family to me. And I mean that in like, in romantic, inclusive way. Like, I love queer family units because they, you can choose your family members, you choose the life and the lifestyle and the values that you want your life and your family and your home to have. And it sounds so much that you guys have created a family dynamic at home, and that you are, fostering your community, you're having parties, you're cooking for each other, you're caretaking for each other. It's very obvious to me that you're doing more than just cohabitating, right? And that is emotionally confusing when you're trying to like look at that very symbiotic, what I perceive to be a healthy living environment, and like try to parse out where the boundaries of your emotions are and like how to protect your heart. Like, how do you look at this big, good, confusing, gooey, painful mess and say, how do I protect myself from what could hurt me. This is confusing.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And, I think that the challenging thing about these types of situations is that, I think that like we sometimes forget that so much of our relationship and the success of our relationship or the health of our relationship can be outside of our control. And, like this idea of like what your roommate said about they don't want to risk ruining or losing what you two have together. And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it that's like so deeply understandable. But the fact is that the circumstances around this relationship have changed significantly. And so it can never be the same as what it was before you two developed these feelings for each other, because you can't go back there. And the reality is that you two do have these feelings for each other. And so it's impacting how this relationship is going to work. And it's sad to me that you two can't figure out a way to make this happen. And I also just want to name that like things have fundamentally changed, and you two are pretending like they haven't changed. You're sort of like going through the same motions and saying, yep, I'm fine with this. I'm fine with this. But again, like our bodies and our hearts know that something has fundamentally changed and know that this relationship isn't functioning in the same way that it was before. And so it's really hard to be in that situation. And I want to say that because I want you to recognize that you're probably going to have to start making different decisions based on the fact that your relationship is changed. It is fundamentally altered from what it was before. And so you probably can't just keep doing the same things and expecting it not to hurt, because guess what? That's what your embarrassment, that's what the feelings of rejection that you feel when they go out with other people. Like that's what your heart is telling you, is saying like, this space isn't as safe as it was for me before, right? This isn't a place where I can trust that we're going to be able to just kind of move through this, because guess what? I'm here. My like your little heart is like, I still have feelings. I'm still here. I still want this person. And watching and pretending like everything is the same intellectually is not tending to what needs to be tended to, which is actually the feelings that you're having about this understandable rejection that you're experiencing every day at work, at home, watching them go out with other people, watching them make you dinner, but as a friend instead of as a partner, right? Like, I just want to name that because I think sometimes we can get so focused on like intellectualizing our way out of these things. But what you're doing is you're doing what you were doing before you confess these feelings, which is just tamping them all down, which is actually not super helpful, because guess what? They don't go anywhere when we tamp them. They just come out in weird places. They like get squished to the sides, and then they're like, wow, what are you doing to me? Right? Like, so I need you to spend some time in the rejection of this. And I need you to recognize that it's hard to tend to rejection. It's hard to tend to feelings of needing to be away from a person if you are in 100% emotional and physical proximity with that person most of your days, right? Like that is so difficult to parse through. And I think that's probably what your heart is telling you, is like, I need more space to breathe. You can't keep tamping me down, and I can't keep being so close to this person who I am feeling all of these feelings about, right? Like, I think that's probably what that embarrassment is telling you in this moment.
Yeah. And Sam and I know that you said you're afraid that the answer is for you to move. I'm not convinced that it is. Sam and I see the path in which that would maybe give you the space to not feel so connected to your hurt about this. But I will offer some suggestions for things to do if you want to stay roommates with this person. I do believe that, we preach the black, and we preach the no contact and the distance here because we know how helpful distance and space and time can be for wounds. But I also know that it is possible, it is possible to be friends with somebody who rejected you, to be friends with somebody who you have feelings for, it's not reciprocated, or whatever the scenario is. But I think the first rule is what Sam pointed out, is that you have to acknowledge that things have changed. it might not feel like the shape and size and contents of your relationship were dramatically altered when you two shared this conversation, confession, whatever, but they were altered. The DNA is different now, right? And so first you just have to acknowledge that things are different. There's a shared understanding. There was rejection, there was hurt or whatever. And so you can't expect, like Sam said, you can't expect yourself to be able to function in the same way because it's not the same way, period, right? And number two, I would say I think that you could stay roommates with this person who you care about, especially if you view this like kind of like how I mentioned earlier as a queer chosen family unit, you know, queer acknowledging that there are all different ways to make a family, all different ways to have relationships, romantic or not. And you could do the labor to recognize like, okay, this person really matters to me. I have feelings for them that expand outside of the bounds of platonic, but I love and respect them so much and appreciate their presence in my life so much that I'm going to do the labor to put those feelings away. And let me tell you, you can do that, but it is labor, right? Like it's not just saying, okay, I have feelings for them, but I'm not going to act on them. I would say, okay, I'm going to imagine my worst fears. They fall in love. They go out to date people and then they bring those people home. How do you get yourself used to the idea that this person is an expansive, diverse, unique human having a unique human experience, and they're going to go out and touch bodies and kiss bodies and bring those bodies home and introduce them to you and want to like cook dinner for those bodies too? Like, I think the answer is not necessarily just move, but people often jump to that answer because it's easier. It's easier to uproot your whole life than it is to really sit with and embody the reality that your roommate might actually fall in love and bring somebody else home. And in order for you to maintain this harmony, this domestic harmony you have right now, you have to figure out a way to be okay with that. I don't know how to do that. I think it's possible. I think it's probably a lot about, you know, I don't know, demonogamizing the mind, right? Like thinking that this person has other important relationships. They have a right to their sexuality. They have, you know, I don't know what it is, but I know that it would take a lot of labor. And it's almost simpler just to move out. That's why people say that advice first.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's more like, it's like, that's the most efficient course of treatment. You know, like you can choose, you can choose a different course of treatment, but it will be more involved and possibly more painful and possibly not give you the outcome.
They're like,
that
do you want the one big pill or 1,000 spiky ones?
Absolutely. And most people are like, okay, well, I guess the one big pill. That's not true. Most people are like, give me the 1,000 spiky ones because I want this person in my life.
I know. And then they're like 50 spiky pills in. They're like, this is poisoning me. And I can't do this.
That isn't working. Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is that, like, I think that you have a grief that needs to be acknowledged here, right? Which is that you're grieving for a potential relationship that you could have had with this person who you really, really, really like, and grieving for the relationship that you had before that is no longer there. Right? Like it's gone. You're operating, but the way that I'm thinking about it is like that relationship has died and now you're like hanging out with the ghost of that relationship who you like can't touch and like is like wispy and like see through, right? But like, and you're like, yeah, this is fine. This is the same thing. And I'm just going to pretend like that the person didn't actually die. And I'm just going to hang out with their ghost for the rest of my life, which is like a choice that we can make for sure. Maybe having the ghost is better than not having that person at all. But I think that in order to move into a new iteration of this relationship with your roommate, you're going to need to spend time grieving what could have been and also what was before this relationship got really disrupted by the understandable and beautiful and wonderful feelings that you both developed for each other. And like Sierra said, I think that it's possible for you to do that in the context of this roommate situation. I would find it impossible to do that. As somebody who lived with an ex for years, I can tell you that it was really difficult for me to figure out how to move on from them, because guess what? They were there all the time. They were physically and emotionally available when I needed them. They did nice things for me, like cooked me dinner and stuff, right? Like it was really difficult to separate what this new thing was that looked a lot like the old thing, and maybe could be if I squished it a little bit, but then also when I squish it, it hurts me because it's not the thing that I actually want. And that proximity, that closeness, that availability of that person made it easier to not think about or to process through the grief of the end of the relationship, the change that our relationship went through. And so my advice is that like something needs to change here. And I think that it is that you need to move out and to create a space and life for yourself or with another person that isn't as emotionally fraught. And I know that feels like you're abandoning in a relationship, but I want to remind you that you are not abandoning a relationship that is functioning well. You're abandoning something that is taking a lot of emotional labor for you to exist in, because it hurts to be in it, right? Because it's a spiky pill that you just keep swallowing over and over and over again. So that would be my advice to you. But like Sarah said, I don't think that is necessarily the thing that you need to do. But I do think that you need to be spending a lot more time with the pain and grief that you're experiencing over this rejection, over the loss of what was a beautiful roommateship that is now a beautiful roommateship that also has rejection in it every day.
And it hurts. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? And spend some more time there and pay attention to and give care to those emotions that are crying out for you, by telling you that you should be embarrassed that you have so many feelings, or by saying, oh my God, I can't believe you're so rejected. This person hates you and you're never going to be good enough for them, right? Because you're squishing them, and that's where they're coming up, right? They're coming up the sides and saying weird things to you. But I need you to stop squishing them and actually listen to what they're telling you, which is, fuck, this sucks that our relationship has changed so fundamentally. Fuck, it sucks that this person doesn't want to be with me, even though I want to be with them. Fuck, it sucks that I have to live every day seeing them, being with them, seeing how perfect our life could be, and they won't do it with me, right? I want you to spend more time in the unfairness of that, in the pain of that, because that, I think, is at the center and what needs to be tended to in order for you to find any way to move into whatever type of future relationship might look like with this person who is right there, but you just can't reach them.
All right, my darling. I believe in you. I do believe in this friendship. I know that a lot of work or spiky pills or maybe a move will have to happen. We don't know the right answer for you, but hopefully this gives you something to think about, and I hope you feel more seen and heard. Thanks so much for writing.
We love you. We hope this helps. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like access to our monthly office hours, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode, as well as access to those office hours. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship meme, but most importantly, you could submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, producing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast and his music. And remember, the most important thing you can do for your healing and your own empowerment when you're feeling big feelings is to acknowledge them, is to acknowledge that you can't go back to the way things were because you are fundamentally changed. That's not a bad thing. Change is a part of relationships. Change is a part of growth. But you can't grow with the change unless you acknowledge it. And if all else fails,
just break up.